on YouTube. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the When at Work podcast. I'm your guest host, Julian Lee, and joining me today is the wonderful Orly Zeewy from Philadelphia. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Julian. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, and we're going to talk about one of the most important things that I think and I love talking about, and it's about breaking through the noise, which is something Orly's been saying for over 20 years, back when personal branding was not as in vogue as it is today. And we're going to talk about personal branding. So, what is it that people don't get about personal branding that you help them to understand?
Well, that's a great question. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions about personal branding is that it's about you just shouting about yourself. And it's really not. It's about connecting with the people who need what you have to offer. And to do that, you have to get clear on who you are as a brand, whether it's you as a personal brand or a company, tech company, or B2B or B2C. It's all pretty much the same in terms of just getting clear on, really what we now call value proposition or your why. And then the second piece is you have to figure out who needs what you have to offer. So what people tend to do is they try to cover all their bases, which I talk about in my book, actually, Ready Launch Brand. And what I find is that the more specific you are, the more you can connect with your ideal customers instead of just trying to, cover all your bases, which is really generic messaging. And then you're speaking to everyone, which means that you're speaking to no one.
Yes, it's one of my favorite sayings, and a lot of people have such fear attached to this, and that they might be doing 10 different things that are kind of related but not really related, and they say, well, if I say no to this, I'm going to miss out on these people. But what
Exactly.
you're saying is pick something, and that maybe you enjoy doing, your favorite type of client, etc., and really just become an expert in that.
Yes. And in fact, what I tell my clients is this. Once you get known for doing one thing really, really well, people will come to you and say, you do this one thing really, really well. Would you be willing to do this other thing? Now it's a whole different, because if you're really good at something, chances are you're good at other things too. And so the idea is that, you want to get known for something, because getting back to this idea of breaking through the noise, we are on average being messaged at a rate of roughly 12,000 messages a day, which translates to more than 4 million messages a year. And that's probably, I'm underestimating this. So what happens is the clearer you can be, the more succinct you can be, the more consistent you can be, the easier it will be for people to find you. And what people don't realize, it's not just about messaging, it's about being able to cut through all that noise of thousands of messages that we're all getting bombarded with. And our attention span, which is something else I talk about in my book, is our attention span has dropped to the point where in 2000 now I'm talking about Americans, so I don't know if it's like this in the rest of the world, but I'm assuming relatively that our attention span in 2000 was 12 seconds and now it's 6. So
Even
you
lower.
don't have, what's that?
Even lower, maybe.
Possibly. Well, I know that when you land on somebody's homepage, you have between 4 to 6 seconds to get my attention. So here's what happens. This is how the breaking through the noise shows up on your website. And that is that, I land here and all I really want to know is, why am I here and why should I care? What most people tend to do is they're internally focused and they talk about their company and how great they are, and their new hire, and how they've made best list of greatest companies. No one cares about this. What they care about is, I land here, I want to understand, is this something that is meaningful to me? And if it's not, is it meaningful to maybe somebody who needs this? So by not doing that, what you're doing is you're shutting me down, because like I said, you have 4 to 6 seconds. And what happens, because this is the digital space, we leave and we never come back. And more importantly, we don't tell anybody about it. So now you've not only lost a potential prospect, but you've lost a referral possibility, right? So, and it's something that really puzzles me, that people don't think about the fact that those who come to your website are not you. They don't know anything about you, right? Unless you directed them there. But these days, most people come through LinkedIn if it's a B2B space, or Facebook if it's in the B2C. Sometimes through Instagram. I mean, there are a lot of social media feeds, but just in the business world, I would say it's through LinkedIn. And then the next thing they'll do is they'll go to your website. And then the key issue that I see is that there's a huge disconnect between what happens when they land on your LinkedIn profile and when they go to your website. So the idea is not just to break through the noise once, but to use all of these different platforms to help you break through on a much bigger scale. And the more consistent, the more aligned everything is, the easier it is for someone to remember you. So if you go on my Twitter feed, you go on my LinkedIn profile, you go on my website, it's the same messaging. I'm not trying to be somebody different on each of these platforms. And I think, again, to your point about, well, then I'm going to miss out on all these other opportunities. It's still really key to figure out who that person is, because you want to be able to constantly remind them, right? This is who I am. This is what I do. This is what matters. And, we all know this. I think we all know, most of us know the law of 7, that we need to see something 7 times before we even remember we saw it. That's just the first step, right? Then it's going to take you a lot more, engagement for somebody to actually remember or think about your message. So the clearer you can be, the more consistent, the more the more focused you can be, the easier it'll be for somebody to find you, buy you, and ultimately refer you.
So there's been a lot of information that you've just said there. So the end of it was having a consistent message, having a clear message, and having it consistently across all different platforms. The other thing you said was, when you go and visit somebody's webpage and they're just listing all this stuff about them, whereas it should be really all about the customer. So catering to the customer, and that comes down to really understanding who your prospect is and what keeps them up at night, what is bothering them, what problem they have. And would you say that's a fair statement?
I talk about that all the time. It's like, you need to know what's keeping your customer up at night. I literally use those words, because if you don't really understand, and by the way, a lot of the other piece of this in terms of understanding your customer is we often have misconceptions because we don't ask them. And this is one of, like, for me, this is such a key thing. It's like, why not ask people, right? And this is even in the startup stage, which is my niche, kind of startup growth, early stage companies. What I find is that people think that founders think that they'll just figure it out. They'll never figure it out. You have to actually find out. And I've got several stories in my book around this idea, of here's what happens when you miss the mark, right? So it doesn't work. It doesn't work unless you truly understand the pain point. And then now you become the solution. And I talk a lot about this idea of becoming the hero in your customer journey.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking advertising agency websites the other day, and they're all the same. And then I saw this one, and it said, use our TikTok influencers to get 30% more sales overnight. Or it just spoke to me exactly what I was looking for. And it jumped out at me, and just, this is going to solve my problem. And the other ones might have been able to solve my problem, but they weren't communicating it to me. It's such an important thing of what you're saying there, Orly.
Thank you. Yeah, and I have to tell you, it seems so obvious to me, right, that we're not here to serve ourselves. I mean, the whole reason why, I'm in business is to help other people be successful. The fact that I've done whatever I've done, you can look on, if you're interested in that, you can go on my about page. There's plenty of information, but you don't lead with that. I don't need to sell you. And this is the other thing. And this has a lot to do with what's happened in the last 20 some years, is that It's not about selling. It's about helping me discover why I want to work with you. And to do that, you have to make me curious, which is why you do not tell me everything on your homepage.
Interesting. So, and what do you show on your homepage, Orly?
I was waiting for that question. So the way I, for me, it's always less is more, right? Less is more. I feel like you either start with a question that's going to get me curious, because then if you ask a question, I assume you have the answer. The other option that I use a lot, or I see a lot that really works well, is using data, using statistics, but doing it in a graphic way that makes me go, oh, like, on my website, I talk about this 12,000 messages, 4 million messages a year. For me, that's the starting point. Because if we understand that we're living in a really noisy world, that changes the conversation. If I start to think about that, I think about the fact that, I need to break through the noise or no one will hear me. And there's this whole idea that if you're not breaking through the noise, that means you're invisible. If you're invisible, I can't find you, right? So our goal, especially in the digital landscape, is to become visible. So on the homepage, you want to keep it really simple. Don't tell me anything other than why am I here and why I should care. So typically you'd want to have maybe, like one sentence, like almost like your mantra, or your, kind of a take on the elevator pitch, right? What is it that you want people, what is it that is, as you were saying earlier, keeping my clients up at night? For me, it's this idea that people need to become visible so they can break through the noise, so they can have conversations and turn their website, have their website turn visitors into prospects. The first thing I always ask my clients is, what kind of traffic are you getting on your website? And believe it or not, most people say, I don't know. They don't follow it. They don't even have a clue, and a lot of times, then they'll say, well, website doesn't really matter. Because, it's just a place, right? A landing page. And it's like, well, no, actually, it matters a lot. If it's done properly, it will actually lead people to your door. That's the whole point. And, I talk about the homepage really being, it's your brand's front door. And so I use this analogy of, if I walk up to somebody's front door, are you going to put out on your front porch, do you put, all your bedroom furniture, your kitchen appliances, right? You don't do that. But that, in effect, is what we do when we put all this stuff on our homepage. We bog it down with so much information. It's impossible for me to, a lot of times, and by the way, this is what I do for a living, and I will look at somebody's website, and I literally have no idea what they do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Huge problem. And I'm just going to bring up your website because it immediately got my attention. And because you are leading with the problem on your website.
That's right.
That's the first, and it's got curiosity as well, which is another thing which gets you to read the rest of the message. And if you lead with that, then you've got an effective website. So I'm just going to bring that up. Give me a second. How long? Sorry for everyone listening, but I'll get that bit out. All right, it's a bit slow. Okay, can we see that? All right, cut through the noise. 12,000 messages a day, or 4 million messages a year. It's almost as if every person is standing in the middle of Times Square trying to figure out what to focus on. Yet as a business leader, it's critical that your message is delivered to your key audience. So I'm thinking, is my message getting lost in all of that? This is so true. I'm not breaking through. So, and that's essentially the problem that you could solve, Orly. So,
right.
That's what
Exactly.
that's what it's all about. And that's fantastic. And who is the main people you work with? You said startups, is that right?
Startups, solopreneurs, small to medium-sized companies that are looking to scale. I do, because I lead workshops and webinars and seminars, and I we'll get, if you have a team and you're trying to break through the noise within your company, I can do that as well. But, to my point earlier, I focus on young companies because it's so critical in today's digital space that you break through the noise fast, because you don't have that much time. You don't have 6 months, to break through the noise. You have, when you launch a company, you have a few months to establish your expertise, to establish yourself as a leader in that space, and to attract your early adopters. So that's why I'm focused there. And so, yeah, that I find that, if you can do it at the beginning, and this is what, again, this is something, one of the reasons why I wrote my book, is because what I found is that you hit the wall 3 to 5 years out. It also turns out that 70% of startups fail by year, I think it's by year 5. So, so that's kind of an interesting thing, right? So the quicker you can break through the noise, the quicker you can get people to understand what you're doing and why it matters, the quicker you can attract those kinds of clients. And actually that brings me to another thing, which is, what the number one reason that startups fail?
What's that, Orly?
No market need. And there's no
Yes,
market
yes.
need, right? Because you haven't done your research. Going back to what you said earlier, this idea that I don't really understand who my ideal customer is. Because in the beginning, it's like, all I'm thinking about is I want to keep the lights on. But the reality is, the quicker you can get to that ideal customer and develop your whole branding around that, your messaging around it, the quicker you can attract that person. And then when you talk about, referrals, they'll refer you more of those kinds of clients. So I think, it's really critical in those first 3 years that you do this. And that's why I built this whole process, a brand building process. And then I also have a brand tune-up that I do, where I can come in and do a whole audit of, your website and your LinkedIn, and, really looking at, where are you on social media, all of those kinds of things. Yeah.
Orly, what do you do if the company has been going for a couple of years and they've got their brand, but it's kind of wrong? I mean, do they have to do a total reset, or what do you recommend?
No. That's why I do a brand tune-up for those companies. So what we typically do, depending on how, especially if it's like, you're talking about 10, 15 people, something like that. I've done workshops with up to 25 people. So then I would do either half day or full day workshop, and basically get everybody on the same page around, kind of what's their core value, their value proposition. And, so many companies, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this, so many companies, they have a list of core values, which I find so intriguing, because really you only have one. That's why it's called core. You only have one core value. That's the value that really helps. It's sort of like, your guideposts. It's your true north, and if you don't have that, then again, there's just a lot of stuff going on. And what people really want to know is, why do I get up in the morning? How am I supporting that value, that core value? So that's what I help them do. And then we can look at the messaging and tweak it accordingly.
Fantastic. And it seems like the best way to get in touch with you is on LinkedIn. Is that right, Orly?
Yeah, what I would suggest is connect with me on LinkedIn. We can schedule a discovery session, and then I can walk you through kind of, we can chat about what your particular messaging, your messaging issues are, and then I can give you some feedback about the best way to start thinking about, which direction makes sense for you, depending on where you are in your growth and process.
Definitely wonderful. And make sure you do it early, because it is a lot harder to do once you've gone down the track. So if you're a solopreneur and you're just starting out, getting an idea of what direction to take, you're unsure, this is probably the ideal to have a chat with Orly at that stage.
Yeah. But like you said, it's not that I can't help you further down, and it's not like all is lost because you've already established yourself. It's really more about, at that point, is to make sure that I help you scale in a way that's going to be the most efficient. And to do that, your messaging has to be on brand. So if you've already established your brand, that's great. A lot of times people have done all the strategy work, they've got so much information. But as you know, because of our access to 24/7 information, it's not that we don't have data, it's that we don't know how to translate it into something meaningful. And so I help you do that.
Definitely. Great. A lot of fantastic information. I love all of this stuff about clarity and developing your message. It's just so important, and it makes a massive difference in terms of standing out, which is the nothing people struggle with. So thanks for coming on, Orly. Some fantastic value there.
Thank you for having
And
me,
I'm going to
Julian.
wrap it up. My pleasure. And thanks for watching and listening. And I'll see you very soon on